Once completing positioning of the patient and localizer, the patient registration process can begin. In this example, the registration process will be completed using the registration probe instrument. Alternatively, other registration-ready instruments such as the flex pointer and integrated balloon dilation system guide wire can also be used to perform registration. Plug the registration probe into the system or into one of the ports on the double instrument support cable. Once the instrument is plugged in, an audible beep will be heard in approximately 5 seconds, indicating the instrument has been recognized by the system and is ready for use. The patient dataset should now be completely loaded, including a display of the 3D model of the patient's head. If the 3D model is not displayed, press F2 to switch layouts until the 3D model is displayed. Select the Operations menu on the upper left side of the navigation screen and select the marker function. Place 3 separate points at 3 identifiable landmarks on the patient's 3D model by left-clicking at each landmark. For example, place 2 initial points near the left and right lateral canthi or outside corner of the eyes. Place the third and last point on the philtrum or just under the patient's nose. Wait a few seconds for the initial landmark place to begin blinking between yellow and green. If all the points remain yellow or green, make sure both the field generator and registration-ready instrument are plugged in and recognized by the system. During the registration process, it is important to use a feather-like touch when using the registration probe. When touching the skin, make sure to make contact yet do not apply heavy pressure. If pressure is applied or if the instrument does not contact the skin, the accuracy of the registration will be affected. Place the tip of the registration-ready instrument at the corresponding first point on the patient with light pressure and remain still. Wait until a beep is heard from the system. Once the first beep is heard, repeat the same procedure for the second and third points. Note, the system will prompt the user to touch the landmarks in the same order in which they were initially placed. Refer to the screen with the corresponding blinking point that needs to be touched. If the points are not touched correctly, the system will either reject the registration or registration accuracy will be poor. If the system rejects the initial landmark registration, the system will prompt the user to start over and retouch the 3 points. Rejection of the initial landmark registration can also happen because the user did not touch the initial 3 points accurately enough. To avoid this problem, ensure that the landmarks are touched as closely as possible to the corresponding point on the patient. If this occurs, try repositioning the points to an area that more closely corresponds to the area being touched. When the first registration is successful, the system will prompt the user to hold the instrument still on the patient's face so that the surface tracing procedure can be initiated. In this example, the starting point is the patient's forehead. Hold the instrument until an audible beep is heard. Once the beep is heard, begin to trace the patient's face. A series of green points will form a line and be displayed on the navigation system, which correspond to the tracing being performed. A status bar at the top of the navigation screen indicates the progress of the points being collected. It is recommended to trace primarily bony, hard structures such as the forehead, temples, bridge of nose, or outer septum, as these anatomical areas provide a more rigid surface that is less susceptible to soft tissue deformations with the surface pressure from the registration probe. Similarly, it is recommended to avoid tracing areas such as the cheeks and the tip of the nose, as these areas are more vulnerable to soft tissue deformation, which will affect registration accuracy. Lastly, avoid tracing in areas outside the 3D model area, as points will not be collected in these areas. Once enough points are collected, the system will give an audible beep indicating that it will begin calculating registration. A minimum of 170 points must be collected to obtain enough information for the system to calculate registration. Registration calculation normally lasts only a few seconds, but may be longer depending on the system configuration. The system will now prompt the user to confirm registration. At this point, the registration pointer can be used to give initial feedback to the user as to whether the registration accuracy is satisfactory. If the initial registration appears satisfactory, The next step will be to officially confirm registration using a registration-ready tool such as the flex pointer or integrated balloon guide wire. Plug in a registration-ready instrument into the system and wait for the beep. Use the instrument to touch identifiable landmarks on the surface of the face. If the accuracy is satisfactory to the user, hold the instrument still on the patient's face until a beep is heard. The crosshairs that correspond to the instrument will now turn from yellow to green to prove confirmation of the registration. If the registration is unsatisfactory, hold any instrument to the divot of the localizer for a total of 2 beeps. The system will prompt the user if they want to proceed with resetting registration. This will reset registration completely. Repeat the registration process now by touching the initial 3 landmarks. After registration is confirmed, if for whatever reason the Fiagon navigation system loses power and must be restarted, the registration information will be retained, obviating the need to reperform a registration. To continue with the procedure, restart the system with the localizer and field generator still plugged in. Reload the same patient data as normal and the registration will also reload.